The biggest difference between completing your intro outline and the outline of your body paragraphs is that your body paragraphs you're going to do more in a point form than into the details that we did with the intro. To outline your body paragraphs, we're going to follow the PQCEA paragraph structure. It's very simple. We're going to follow the points through it. When you've completed one, you'll go back and you'll do it 2 more times. You need to have 3 good body paragraphs in a 5-paragraph literary analysis. Okay, so what exactly do we put in the P for point? Well, the point is just the smaller argument that relates to the larger one. It's meant to prove the thesis is true. A few things that you need to understand about the point. First, it must relate to directly how in your thesis. How outlines the 3 ways the creator uses the literary elements or devices to accomplish the intent of his or her text. For example, if you were using plot, you would need to look at the form and structure. If you were using people, you need to look and refer to the characterization pieces. Perhaps you're looking at imagery. Well, if you're looking at imagery, you'll want to select different ways that the language is used to create the imagery. For me, I've chosen to use setting, so I'm going to look at parts of the setting such as social norms, social rituals, and physical setting, which are the parts of a setting that the author will provide. I might also touch on time, I might also touch on the place, those types of things, but we don't have a lot of that information in The Giver except that it's the future and it's a small town. So I've stuck to the 3 things that seem to come out of the text the most. If you would like further information on how to attack each of the different ways of looking at elements, then other tutorials are available for that. When I start looking specifically at my points, I've chosen to look at social norms, social rituals, and physical setting. It's important to note that every one of these are given their own paragraph. We will start by looking at social norms, which I have basically said is Jonah's community is based on sameness. Social rituals, where group birthdays and the ceremony of 12, and then physical setting, no mirrors, noticing differences elsewhere. I also want you to notice that up in the right-hand corner I've placed the use of dystopian society. There is social norms, social rituals, and physical environment, prevent individuality from being practiced within society, works to present the author's opinion that differences are meant to be celebrated. I have to remember when I'm creating my points that I still have to relate those points to that thesis. So what I want you to notice about the point is that I've created here is that it's very simple. It's to the point, and all I'm doing is showing how I'm relating it to the thesis. So in this case, I'm noticing that social norms are used in the book because they're juxtaposed against our own society. My interpretation will end up being that the author recognizes how audiences will see it as absurd and can use this to show the importance of differences in our own society. Adding a quote or a paraphrase or a specific detail is a really important part of building your body paragraph. So it doesn't have to be a direct quote when you don't have access to your text. If you have access to your text, it is encouraged to have a direct quote that you are analyzing. Or you can just simply go to a concrete detail or a specific detail. Remember that it should be specific. So when you watch my versions, look for the specificity of it. It's one particular thing I'm talking about, not a very broad general piece of information. In this particular paragraph outline, I'm using the responsibilities assigned regardless of age, adulthood assigned at a specific age, and not allowed to feel fear no matter what, even as an innate human feeling. When I say specific, I haven't went to the general, well, ages are just assigned different things. That would be general. Okay, now this information that we're using is kind of useless to the reader or to your audience if there isn't any context provided. A quote, for example, doesn't mean anything if you don't know when it's being said, who it's being said to, maybe even why it's being said at that given time within the text. You could also give context as situating at the beginning, middle, or end of the story, for example, because when it happens at the beginning, it's giving you information that's expository, where if it happens in the middle of the climax, it has a very different feeling to it. So it helps if you provide context to it. Again, keep it simple, summarize in 1 to 2 sentences when and where the creator presents this information, and then just state it as it is. Okay, so the whole point of a literary analysis is that you are making a judgment and evaluation, and you're trying to convince your reader that your judgment and evaluation is true. This is the crux of it. Your E for evaluation is where you point out what the text is actually trying to do. And so in order to show that, you actually need to use strong action words when you're describing what the text is doing. So if you'll notice, what I've done is I've said it depicts strong, rigid rules about everyone being the same. The use of predetermined times for losing fear, etc. Is different from our own, where a child's development is taking into consideration. So I've explained why I believe that it depicts this. And that's a really important part of the body paragraph. And then finally, your analysis. So the analysis has to kind of sum everything up that you've just said. So how does your point on the first level and the quote that you're relating to it in the context that it's given according to your evaluation support your thesis? So it's probably the most important statement in the body paragraph. You use it to explain how your conclusion supports your thesis again. You phrase it differently and connect it to your evaluation, and it should sum up your entire paragraph. If at the end of your analysis statement I can't see its connection to the thesis, then you need to reevaluate if the analysis is done correctly. You'll notice that in mine it says show how being different is not acceptable and expected behavior is to be the same. This appeals to the audience sense of individual identity, and so again, when you want the audience to look at that individual identity piece, it shows the differences as being something that's meant to be celebrated. Great, so now that I've done it once, I can do it 2 more times for my 3rd and 4th body paragraphs, which are my 2nd and 3rd body paragraph. My social rituals paragraph, I'm going to go through the way that I've outlined these just so that you can stay up to speed with me as we go through this process. Social rituals paragraph is focused on the point of social rituals, that celebration happens in groups, individuals cannot be celebrated. The ceremony of one is the specific detail that I'm going to kind of focus on. Context, it happens in chapter 2. There's a discussion about ceremonies and rituals that are completed together so as to ensure sameness. The dad loses count of his age as part of this conversation. The evaluation, it emphasizes the importance placed on sameness and the rules against celebrating anything that could possibly make you different, even your age. And then finally, an analysis piece goes right back to the whole piece again. It shows how being different is not acceptable and limits individuality. Again, appealing to the audience that on that individual sense. My final body paragraph will focus on the physical setting, or generally just other setting pieces that happen. So it talks about the mirrors, which don't actually exist in very many places. The lack of mirrors prevents people from seeing their own differences from others. The community is called sameness, and then anything that's elsewhere is being anywhere but where you are, and so that's even used metaphorically, thinking about not being able to accept your present circumstance. I'm going to focus in on the fact that the term elsewhere is in capital letters, meaning that it's a separate place and a formal place, but I can also look at this quote about mirrors were rare in the community. Early in the book this happens, but then it talks about it throughout. So this idea of being elsewhere is continuously cropping up throughout the book. And then finally suggests a forced acceptance of present circumstances and acceptance of no matter what. No other options are presented so as to avoid the discontent, because the whole goal is happiness can't happen if you're not able to celebrate yourself. And it becomes important for everyone in the community to feel the same, even when they're not. Without knowledge of how you are different, you cannot celebrate your individuality.